But one of famous words for that Nietzsche is uttering is God is dead. Nietzsche was a man of many different ideas, and one of his ideas was that God was dead. He actually said in the New Testament, in the Bible, there's the Old Testament and there's the New Testament. In the New Testament, there's only one person to be sympathetic with, and that's Pilate. And Pilate was the emperor who basically, more or less convicted. No, what did he do? He was asked to rule as kind of as a supreme court in the case against Jesus, and he ruled in favor of the Roman, so against Jesus. And according to Nietzsche, that was the only sympathetic figure in the Bible. What he meant was that he came up with the phrase that religion is opium des volkes, means it's a drug for the people.
Why he said God is dead?
So basically, what he saw, what was happening was mass democratization. Democracy was coming up, and people were to think for themselves because they had to make their own decision. Democracy was growing, and he felt like that religion had been a dogma, had been almost like the same as Confucius. You could say it was a roadmap for people to follow, but he encouraged people to live their own lives, to make their own decisions, and live more dangerously. He said that actually the Bible is a book to support people's weakness, because it talks about, for example, forgiveness, but the reality is that the Bible is written by people who are too weak to take revenge, and a lot of virtues that are described in the Bible are basically human weaknesses. So he called it the slave morale. So people who are basically too scared to grab life by the horns, they would follow religion, and they made it into a virtue. And that's actually that kind of attitude that made people follow and become docile, and made that into a virtue which he believed was not true to human nature. So with the rising of democratization and with the individual freedoms, he said, okay, well, God is dead, and that's actually what we're seeing. Well, still in very early stages in that period, in the second half of the 19th century. But he already saw that. And he says, well, okay, so religion is gone. We need to express ourselves more. We need to be true to our urges, to our envy. Envy was an important theme in Nietzsche's work. So people are envious, and therefore they should not be ashamed of that. That is a true emotion. Only you should channel it right. One of the things that Nietzsche proposes as a form of self-expression, art takes a very important role. So there's the need for art and the arts for people to express themselves and to remain their sanity and their individualism.
So I still don't understand why he denied virtue.
No, actually, he said our virtues are false. Our virtues are false because basically, people who wrote the Bible, the people who wrote the Bible, they wrote the Bible hundreds of years after Jesus Christ was already gone and passed away. And people wrote the Bible as okay. You should not be envious. You should do this. Don't do that. You should always be forgiveful. That's how it was described. Human beings were prescribed to do these things, so to be forgiveful. But he said, well, actually, the people who wrote that book, who wrote the Bible, they made forgiveness into a virtue, something good. But actually, the reality is that those people who wrote it, they were actually too weak to pursue their to be able to take revenge. So people should be more true to their nature. They were not naturally forgiveful. They were not naturally good, and it doesn't matter if you, for example, one of these. One of your favorite rulings from the Bible is do not lust after your neighbor's wife, for example, right? So that is something like, well, that's nonsense. Basically, people should remain true to their nature, and the only reason why they didn't lust after her was that they were too scared to do so, and therefore they wrote it down as a virtue. But people should live more dangerously and pursue their own passions.
Really? Pursue their passion means pursue their desire.
Right.
Pursue their whatever they want.
Right, live more dangerously. That's how you should live. You should try to become.
Why he says so?
Because people should aim for greatness. Religion kept them small. By always being moderate, by always trying to be good and to accommodate, people remain small. And this is also where the concept of Übermensch came from. Übermensch were basically people who were independent, who were going against the stream.
So he observed the society more pessimistic, right?
He felt that society was kept in a grip by religion. By religion was an opium, was trying to sedate people from their pains, from their desires, from their true selves, and try to water them down into these docile, into these non-aggressive, non-envious, these virtuous people. But that's not their true nature. And if you are always accommodating yourself, if you're always watering yourself down, you cannot live up to greatness. Everybody should strive to be great.
What I do not understand is religion, or especially Christianity, is a core pillar of the European people. But why did he deny for that core?
He says that. So what he says is that basically the teachings of the Bible, the teachings of religion, they teach us to be good, to be generous, to be forgiveful, to do all these things that, and they are depicted as virtues. But the reality is that they are not virtues. They're just ways to keep people small and to make them followers, instead of that they pursue their passions and their urges and try to become great and independent and express themselves in arts, express themselves and in pursuing their urges, their needs, survival of the fittest, those kinds of primal instincts that drives people towards greatness. And the Bible is kind of taking that out. That the Bible is keeping people small, and it's basically it's a drug that sedates the people, that makes them want to stay small in order to follow religion. Therefore, religion is not good for people.